Hello, everybody. Welcome to 1652 Review. I'm 16.
And I'm 52.
And here's our review.
Here we go.
Today we're going to be discussing Living Dark, the story of Ted the Caver.
These are high-tech graphics, folks, so don't be shocked and surprised.
Yes, we are professionals when it comes to editing.
That's right. Well, and graphics.
And graphics, of course.
Thank you. So, what we're going to do is just to give you a little bit of background about us and what we're doing. So, we've got the perspective of a 16-year-old, and we have the perspective of
a 52-year-old.
That's right. So, the idea here is to do some reviews on some different properties that we like. Movies, TV shows, games, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever we feel like doing, that's what we're going to do, because
that's how we roll.
That's how we roll. So, today's topic...
Ted the Caver.
We're going to give you a little bit of a brief overview. We're going to kind of give you our hot takes on it, and then we'll have some discussion, and we'll see what we come up with.
All right.
Why don't you go ahead and tell them kind of give them the overview, what it's all about.
All right, so I'm the one who introduced him to Ted the Caver.
That's right.
So I have actually been a big fan of horror and creepypastas. Like, one of my favorite directors is Tim Burton. I mean, he's not really horror, but like he's got that edge to him, you know, that weird off-putting thing. So naturally, as a kid in middle school, when I heard about the first creepypasta ever made, Ted the Caver, I knew I had to listen to it. So, but it's been years, and I recently listened to it. I introduced him to it, and we both really like it. So the plot of Ted the Caver is this guy named Ted. So
he's a caver, right?
Yes, he's a caver. So
just checking.
Yeah. Back in 2000, this website appeared called Ted's Caving Page, and this was basically Ted's diary of all the events that happened in this cave not far from his home. And it's basically just his diary. Like he's reading from his diary, or in this case for the website. We listened to a radio drama by the Dark Sondheim. I'll leave a link to that narration in the link below, because it was really good. Best version I've ever heard. So
let me just stop you right there. So what we listened to was a radio drama, right? And it was this guy's diaries, and it kind of tells the story of what's happening, right?
Right.
Okay.
So the story is Ted and his friend B, or Brad, they decide to check out this small hole in this cave that they go to, and this small hole is it's a virgin cave passage. Like when they look through the hole, they see like just a small tunnel. It's very tight. Like it's to the point where you're on your stomach, your head's turned to the side, and the only at one point in the passage, the only way you can move is if you exhale all of the breath in your lungs.
There's no way I'm doing that.
Yeah,
there is no possible way I'm doing that.
I would be terrified.
Yeah. And just so you know, just real quick, anyone who's not familiar with the term virgin passage, what is that? So that's for cavers, a virgin passage would be a passage of a cave where no one has ever been, ever. So the idea is they found this hole, and their thought was they would be the first humans to ever enter that part of the cave, which is why they were desperate to get in there.
Yes.
Right? Okay, continue. So
the story goes on, and Ted and B are, they're drilling, they're whacking away at the hole, trying to get it open enough just for Ted to squeeze through, because Brad is, he had a caving accident, he can't really do stuff. So, but as they're digging, chipping away, they start to hear weird noises, like a rumbling from in the passage. They feel different, like the wind through the passage like keeps changing, it keeps stopping, or it comes back really strong or just really weak. It's a really slow burn, and it is actually very effective. And at some point they hear a scream from within the passage, like not even like, it wasn't even like a human scream, it was this weird creature sound. I'll play my version of it here. Alright, great. Editing magic, father. Yeah. And then, Ted gets in there, and he does some exploring. He finds this hieroglyphic. I'll put an image of that here. All right, beautiful. What'd you think of that hieroglyphic?
You know, it's a pretty interesting hieroglyphic.
All right.
But I think the long and the short, because we don't want to tell the whole thing.
Yeah,
but the long and the short is, he goes in, some strange stuff happens, they go back out, they get one of their buddies to go in, he comes out, he's all freaked out, and then in the end,
the ending is after Ted, B, and their friend Joe, who goes in the cave without Ted, and he has some experience. They start seeing things at their homes. They're really freaked out, and at some point, Ted and Joe meet, and they decide they need to go back. And so they get Brad, and Ted leaves the cave, leaves the page off with, you know, to my friends and family, thank you. I'm gonna go in this cave. I will conquer this cave. And the last thing he posted, was that, like, telling of his experience with out of the cave. And the last thing he wrote was, "Love, Ted." And that was the last time it was.
In what year did that happen?
So the last time the page was updated was in May 19th of 2001. So that was the last time it was ever updated.
So that was 19 years, almost 20 years ago.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then, years go by, and it's 2013 or 14 or 15, sometime around there. David Hunt makes a movie called Living Dark, the story of Ted the Caver, which is a movie adaptation of the story of the website. And, it's two brothers, Ted and B, they made them brothers in the movie, who are mourning the loss of their father, and they find a cave where their father was working in, and they find the hole, and, they start working on it. Very similar things happen.
It's the same story. It's just a movie adaptation of the story that that was originally posted as web postings, really, right? Like a blog, right?
It was a blog.
Yeah, it was a blog.
Now, there were some changes. For example, they're brothers, and they have an uncle, Uncle Charlie. He's a fantastic character, but we'll get to that in a bit. They still have Joe, but Joe's not really their friend. He's just some guy they meet, and it's very different. So let's get into what we like about. Let's get into our hot takes.
So let me start out. So I think, and that was a good synopsis. So it wasn't too long, and it kind of tells that's basically the story. Weird stuff happens when these guys go into the cave. That's the short version. I think I really enjoyed the audio playback it was like a radio drama, right? That we listened to, and it was entertaining. It was told, obviously he's reading like diary pages and telling the story, and they had some sound effects that kind of went along with it, and it really reminded me of when I was a kid. I used to listen to with my dad some old radio shows, and it was a radio drama. I mean, that's pretty much what it was, and it was entertaining. It wasn't super complicated. It was easy to follow, and it was enjoyable. And what I really liked is at the end it left with, right, we're going to go back into the cave after all this weird crap happened, and I'll check in tomorrow, and that was it. And that was almost 20 years ago. So So it leaves you with a little cliffhanger at the end. You don't really know what happened. You don't, in the radio drama, he never really saw anything. The movie version changed quite a bit.
Oh, yes.
It essentially followed the same story, but like he was talking about, they added some new characters. They made the two guys brothers. They added an uncle in there who was kind of mentally challenged, I think, a little bit, or a special needs guy. And then while they were in the cave in the movie version, they kind of showed these creatures. Mm-hmm. Now, in the blog or the radio drama that we listened to, none of that was in there. It was implied that there was something in the cave with Ted.
Yeah,
and with Joe.
It wasn't. I talked to Joe and he saw these creatures, or I saw these creatures. No, it was. So spoiler alert. If we forgot to put that in there.
The whole thing's a spoiler.
Yes, I'll put spoiler in the title. So, when the final time Ted goes in the cave, by himself. He brings a phone with him that's wired to B, who's on the outside, and he's walking around, and there's this room that has a round rock in there that's leaning against the wall, and he's checking out the room, but at some point while he's looking through another passage, he hears a rock sliding noise, which they've been hearing from in the passage while they were digging, and Ted turns around and loses his state of mind and goes up and smashes his light and his head. I mean, he was wearing a helmet, but it's still it really hurt. And now he's in complete darkness with only glow sticks. And
was it a red glow stick?
No, it was a green one. Well, in the movie they use
it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it really does. So his light is smashed and now he's completely in the dark. He heard a rock sliding noise, and now, with all these weird things happening, now he's in the dark in that cave alone. And, he can't contact B, and then he throws a glow stick into the room, and then as he's leaving, he notices the rock was moved. And it's like a boulder. It's a big round rock.
Yeah,
it's not like a tiny little thing. No, it's a big rock that's been moved to the side, and behind the rock is a passage that's at a 45-degree angle and smooth all the way through. So it's implied that there's something in there with him.
Right.
But it's never shown.
So in the movie they show these kind of dark creatures, right? It's
they look very
humanoid, but they're you don't get a good.
They kind of look like, from what I've seen, like what we see, and you don't see much of them, but from what you see, they kind of look like the rocks of the cave. Like they look like cave
Yeah, they're just kind of dark outlined figures, like shadowy kind of, but humanoid. And they're creatures, and
there's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them. So in the movie, there's a lot of them. In the blog or the radio drama, it's just implied that there's something there, but he never sees anything. But in the movie, they show them, and it kind of goes to something that I really enjoyed the radio drama, because you didn't really know what was happening. And you really took it from a first-person perspective, literally, because he's reading diary entries, which is the ultimate first-person perspective.
Yes.
And you only know what he knows, and in the movie, they're showing you things that. I mean,
well, in the movie, it's still from the perspective of Ted, but
it is.
It's not like. It's not like Lord of the Rings. Like your example, we've talked about this before. You had an example of it's not like Lord of the Rings where here we see Frodo and Sam, and now we're seeing Aragorn and all the other guys. No, it's just from the perspective of Ted, but not fully. It's not like we're in Ted, but we still just know what only they know.
Yeah, and I think I like the idea that there's some mystery behind it and there's some unanswered things, and I think that it lends to the creepiness and the scariness that you don't really know, and I completely understand that for the purposes of a movie you have to make some changes, and I'm cool with that. This change to me maybe wasn't necessary.
Yes.
Or at least to the degree that they did it in the movie. And I think the other thing that I didn't care, I was okay with them making the two guys. In the original, they were just friends. In the movie, they were brothers. That's fine. And they gave some backstory and some things about their dad died and all that jazz. That's fine. They introduced a new character, their Uncle Charlie. I was cool with those changes. Near the end of the movie, the problem that I had with it was all of a sudden the uncle's gone from the house, and there's an implication that he went to the cave. And so the two brothers in the movie go to the cave. They squeeze through that real tight, they call it the squeeze. This little
Floyd's tomb is what they call it.
Yeah, but that section of Floyd's tomb they call the squeeze, right? And that's it's this high, and they got to squeeze through there, and it takes a while to get through there. And now they're in the cave in that big room with the round rock, and there's Uncle Charlie in there, and these creatures
are just dancing around him. Like Charlie is like just sitting on a rock with a flashlight going ah, and the creatures are just kind of going like ooh, we're scary.
Yeah, and what I didn't care for in the movie was the first question that we both had was
how did he fit?
How the hell
there?
did they get him in there? Right? Okay, so these creatures got him from the house.
Well, not from the house, so
or whatever. He showed up at the cave, but how did he get? There's no way a middle-aged man who's pudgy could get through that squeeze. There's no way.
Like Brad, who's even like smaller than Ted, and he's really skinny, has a tough time just getting through that. Like he like cuts into his shoulder just trying to get through there.
Yeah, there's no way.
Like
so. It really left me with the impression of, oh, well, they're going to explain this. There's got to be a second opening to this cave.
Yeah.
But there wasn't, and there never was. So it kind of left you a little unsatisfied. I enjoyed the movie. It was a low-budget film.
I do, too.
I thought it was well done. I didn't have any problem with it except for that whole business with how the hell did they get the uncle in there?
And another thing that we both...
Not good.
Yeah. Another thing we both have a problem with is in the movie, Joe, who's the clerk store, and he goes in the cave with them. He goes into the cave with Ted, and Ted goes out because he hit his head, and so Ted goes in, and you hear a loud noise. I'll play the scene here.
You think you can come in here with your I'm sorry's and everything's gonna be okay? I don't think so.
All right, good. That's all you need to know. And he comes out. He's all soaked. He's pale-faced. He's distressed. And he goes up to the surface, and Ted and B are like, "What's going on?" And then he pulls out this map and he hands it to Ted, and it just says Floyd's tomb on it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, where'd this map come from?
Yeah, where'd it come from? And not only that, the guys in the movie look at it and they go, oh my God, and then it's never really talked about again. It's just dropped.
And then, with the problem with not really the problem with Uncle Charlie, but like, later Uncle Charlie's upset because no one's coming to his dead brother's birthday. He doesn't know he's dead. And he finds the map, and somehow he knows where to go. He somehow knows that takes them to the cave that they're working in.
Right.
And then, that
was a problem.
That
was a big problem.
Yes. And...
But not to crap on it. I think the movie had some issues, but I think overall it was a well done, low budget version of a low budget weblog that was on the internet 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I think overall it's a pretty entertaining story. I know there was talk about is it true, is it not true.
So let's get into that. So
okay.
So the guy who wrote it, his name is Ted Heijman, and he did an interview he did like some news story interview like on the internet, and then he did an interview with a guy on YouTube. I'll put the link somewhere, probably in the description. And he's come forward and he said, okay, half of this is true, like the whole going into the cave and working on the cave and the squeeze and all that stuff. That stuff's real.
Yeah.
He went with his buddy, and they found this cave, and they opened it up, and they went in there, and it was just more cave. That was to the extent. And so when Ted,
reasonable.
So when Ted was like, oh, I'll write about this, and so he's putting his thing on the story, but then he thought, what if I made this a scary story? And so he started to embellish it a bit, and add the noises, add the weird things, add all like the whole experience with him in the cave where like the rock moved and hieroglyphic. No, that all that was fake. That was him making a story, and it's not. It's a great story, honestly. It is. I think what he did was perfect. I mean, especially back. Because this came out in the early days of the internet, like, so it was like, just imagine you're, imagine you're, some dude in the, I mean, you grew up, you were around during the early 2000s, but imagine you're on your computer, and your friend's like, dude, you gotta check out this Ted's Caving page, you gotta check out Ted the Caver. you know, it's real, like it's this dude, it's all this. So, and I think it's, at the time, it was perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because in, what, 2000, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. So you weren't even alive in 2000.
Yeah. I was born 4 years later.
I was, clearly. But I think, you know, blogs and stuff like that, and it's interesting that he said he discovered this in middle school. And, you know, I think kids of that age would find stuff like this and it would be entertaining. You know, even the term creepypasta, like, okay, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard in my life, but whatever. I get it. I know what it is. I know what you're talking about. It's just a scary story, right? So
it's like a copy pasta, but they just change it to creepy.
I understand.
Internet scary story.
It's an internet scary story, right? Or a creepy
And
story.
it was the first one.
Okay, so it started the genre, and that's fine. I think it was, you know, for a guy like me who in the year 2000 or 2001, you know, I was a little bit older. I wasn't tuned into that stuff at all, like not even a little bit. And you know,
He was busy playing Age of Empires 2 and taking care of his family.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, yeah, but I think overall, I think if we kind of wrap it up a little bit, and I think overall, I think the story is good. I really like the radio drama that we listened to. I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed the movie for what it was. It has some problems, like I talked about.
Yep.
But I think overall, it's a good story. It was entertaining. So overall, let's talk about our final review. So,
all right.
Final rating of this. So we've got two properties here. We've got or one property, but we've got the radio drama that we listened to,
and we have
the movie. So I think for myself, I would give the radio drama maybe I would probably give it maybe a 7 out of 10. And the movie, I would give a 6 out of 10.
Okay. For me personally, I would give the story a 9 out of 10. Because I think for the first creepypasta, I think it was perfect.
Okay.
The movie, I would give a 7 out of 10. I think it is a great movie. It's probably my favorite horror movie. I mean, I haven't watched many horror movies.
I have.
He has. So for me, I think for a horror movie based off my favorite creepypasta, I'd give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Now, we have, so besides our own personal ratings of the property that we're reviewing, we have a pop culture scale. This is this is for both our generations. So
right.
My generation, some of us, like mostly the people who are into creepypastas and other stuff, like my generation would not, maybe some of us would know about it. Some would be like, what's a creepypasta? And his generation, maybe a few, but I don't think a lot.
So I think, let me explain the pop culture rating. Pop culture rating, like Sam said, is what is a 16-year-old? How much has this property penetrated popular culture within each of our age brackets? So I think for the 50-somethings, right, Gen X type folks, I would say this is very low. I think very few people have heard of it, and the ones who have, it's because they have teenage kids. And so I would probably give this a 2 on the pop culture rating. Doesn't mean it's bad, but I think for my generation, it's just something that we missed, right? It wasn't part of what we had growing up, and the only way we're introduced to stuff like this is through our kids. So I would give it a 2 for Gen X.
For Gen Z, I would give it a 3 because I know a lot of my friends, at least, really like creepypastas and scary stories and stuff. And you know, we grew up in the early 2000s, so we were very, and even now we're very heavily, you know, with the internet. Like, that's So at least my friends, again, love scary stories and stuff. So I'd give that a 3 on the pop culture scale for Gen Z.
All right, there we go.
All right.
So there's our review of
Living
the
Dark, the story of Ted the Caver, aka Ted the Caver.
That's right. So, thank you for joining us today, and
Yes.
we'll be looking forward to doing more reviews on 1652 Review.
Yes. So thank you all for watching. Please check out the description, check out the story, listen to the drama. I'll put the drama and the webpage, and I'll leave a link to the movie. I highly suggest, we both highly suggest that you give it a listen or a read or a watch.
That's right.
All right.
Have a nice day.